Knull, god of the void, slicer of worlds.
The Last Dance really felt like the natural endpoint for Eddie's story. Even Tom Hardy hinted that this third film would be his final ride as the character. And yeah, that still might be true, but let's not kid ourselves. Sony's not about to walk away from Spider-Man movies anytime soon. If anything, this might be the perfect setup for a full-on reboot. We're all feeling the fatigue. Sequels, prequels, remakes left and right. But Sony's kind of painted itself into a corner. The Last Dance was sold as Eddie Brock's final chapter, with Hardy returning for one last time. The studio leaned into that idea hard, making it clear that this was meant to wrap up everything. And for months leading up to release, there were heavy rumors flying around that Venom would actually die, giving fans an emotional send-off. But when the credits rolled, the ending felt pretty by the numbers, and way less impactful than fans expected. Still, one thing was crystal clear. People aren't tired of Venom, not even close, and Sony knows it. Despite Hardy's comments and all that final chapter marketing, there are signs all over the place that the story might not be over just yet. That ending feels less like a goodbye and more like a timeout, a reset button, and it leaves the door wide open for what comes next. Sony's made a mess of its universe in a lot of ways, but Venom has always been the exception. In the comics, he's evolved far beyond a typical Spider-Man villain. Venom's got depth, existential drama, internal conflict, a complex moral compass, and that's exactly what makes him valuable as a standalone brand. The studio's clearly aware of this, especially with how much money they're making off merch and collectibles alone. Still, let's be real. Tom Hardy probably won't be headlining Venom 4. If we're lucky, maybe he shows up in Secret Wars or some other big crossover, but that's a big maybe. What's more likely is that Sony hits the reboot switch on the entire Spider-Man universe, and this time, they might finally get it right. There's already buzz that the studio's been eyeing an R-rated Venom reboot with a body horror edge. That's a bold direction, especially for a studio like Sony, but after all the misfires, a darker, grittier reimagining actually sounds like a real possibility. Even though Venom 3 teased the whole King and Black storyline and hinted at Knull's arrival, Venom 4, if it even happens, probably won't look the way most fans are imagining. Knull feels a little out of sync with the current direction, almost like a third wheel in a story that's already juggling too much. Instead of diving straight into some massive cosmic showdown, Sony seems more interested in wrapping up this arc on their own terms, using their roster of characters to carve out a distinct corner of the Marvel universe. One of the biggest surprises in The Last Dance was how quickly Agony rose to prominence. She became a central figure in the third film, and while her portrayal veered far from the comics, the changes were bold. Instead of acid blasts like in the source material, the live-action Agony got super speed, and it totally changed how she operated in battle. By the end of the movie, she's the only symbiote left standing. That twist alone has sparked plenty of speculation that she could take over as a lead in Sony's future projects, especially if they keep pushing forward with Knull's storyline. Juno Temple, who played Agony, even hinted that the studio has plans for her character beyond The Last Dance, and when an actor drops a tease like that, it usually means more than just a cameo. In the first post-credits scene, we hear Knull awaken and start talking about conquering new worlds. But what really grabs your attention is that he's not just monologuing into the void, he's speaking directly to someone off-screen. He mentions that their world will fall next and that the champion has already been defeated. It sounds like he's talking about Spider-Man, and yeah, that would be the obvious pick. But knowing Sony, there's a good chance they left that scene vague on purpose. That way, they can pivot later and drop whoever they want into that confrontation. While everyone's assuming Tom Holland's Spidey will go up against Andy Serkis's Knull, it's just as likely that Sony might hand that spotlight to Agony instead. At the same time, rumors are already flying that Sony wants to bring Venom back, just maybe not with Tom Hardy. And if that's true, there are three main ways they could go about it. The first option is a full-on reboot. Sony could wipe the slate clean and start over with a brand new origin story, but this time they'd tell it from a different angle. If they go all in on horror elements and shoot for an R rating, this reboot could really hit big at the box office. Fans have been begging for a darker, scarier version of Venom, one that taps into his villain roots instead of making him a reluctant anti-hero. A gritty, terrifying, no-holds-barred take could be exactly what the franchise needs to shake things up and earn back some credibility in Marvel's increasingly crowded universe. The second option, bring Venom back without a reboot, just resurrect him somehow, and believe it or not, they could actually make this work within the current canon. Now that Knull's awake, the stakes aren't just global, they're cosmic. In the comics, Knull's origins are tied to the Celestials, which Sony doesn't have access to, but that's not a deal breaker. The writers could invent their own pantheon of gods, with Knull leading the dark side and a new force rising to oppose him, the Enigma Force. For those who don't know, the Enigma Force is the embodiment of light and cosmic balance. According to Marvel lore, it's been around since the dawn of the universe, constantly battling Knull's darkness. But here's the catch. Its power was always spread thin because it kept bonding with multiple hosts. Eventually, it realized the only way to truly stand a chance was to fuse with a single, worthy champion. And in the comics, that champion was none other than Eddie Brock. The Enigma Force transformed him into a god-tier warrior, giving him enough power to take Knull down. If Sony wants to wrap up the King and Black Ark in epic fashion, this could be the perfect route. Eddie ascending to a cosmic-level symbiote slayer, backed by the Enigma Force. That's a finale that checks all the boxes. Emotional payoff, massive scale, and a natural path to keep the universe going if they want to expand it further. The third option? Agent Venom. And it's not just a fan theory. The Last Dance practically teases it outright. During the final battle, one of Strickland's soldiers loses his legs. We never hear his first name, but they make a point of calling him Thompson. He's clearly meant to be Flash Thompson, one of Spider-Man's most iconic supporting characters. And yes, Sony owns the rights to him. In the comics, Flash loses his legs while serving in the military. Later, he agrees to join a government experiment where he bonds with the symbiote and becomes Agent Venom, a more tactical, weaponized version of the character. It's a slick, action-heavy reinvention that trades monster chaos for military precision. So, post The Last Dance, it wouldn't be a stretch for this version of Flash to sign up for a high-risk government program, looking for a way to walk again. Instead of using the full-strength symbiote, he gets fused with what's left of the weakened alien strain, maybe even a fragment left behind after Eddie's final fight. This means the relationship between host and symbiote wouldn't be as chaotic as before, not because Flash has better control, but because the symbiote itself is too depleted to resist. That sets the stage for a much more grounded soldier meets alien bond kind of story, perfect for a fresh new direction. It's a smart way to keep the Venom name alive without relying on Eddie Brock or rebooting the whole thing from scratch. Plus, it opens up a ton of story potential for Sony's Spider-Man universe going forward. They get to tap into new characters, new threats, and maybe even bring in crossover elements with other Marvel-adjacent properties they've got in the vault. And when you really step back and look at it, Venom 3, despite all the explosions, symbiotes, and big battles, feels less like a conclusion and more like a launch pad. The plot kind of takes a backseat to all the hints and setups for what's next. Whether those pay off the way fans hope is still up in the air, but one thing's for sure, a trilogy this profitable and this loved isn't the end, not even close. Sony's bringing Venom back, it's just a question of when and in what form. But no matter how the next chapter plays out, you can bet Venom is going to stay a major player in whatever Sony's cooking up for their Spider-Man universe.